Good morning. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching from the world. Welcome to Friday's edition of the WTF1 Wrap, powered by our friends at MoneyGram. I'm your host, Dre Ciaran, and with me on Friday of the Australian Grand Prix weekend, and a lot to get through, funnily enough, a kind of chaotic pair of practice sessions, is Mr. Ciaran Oakes. Good to see you, Ciaran. How's it going?
Yeah, doing well, thanks. It's that one race in the year apart from Suzuka where sleep is a bit of an issue, but I'm feeling good. It's good to be here. It's good to be here. How are you doing?
Half asleep, but
Yeah.
we press on anyway. But no, this is how it goes. Unfortunately, I mean, we are filthy Europeans. We can't really complain about this because at the end of the day, I mean, most of the rounds are in our favor. This is like one of, like you said, like this and Japan are the two real bad ones for us. But it goes both ways. Most of the rounds go in our favor. But yes, welcome to our teammate Quaddy Battles edition of the WTF1 Wrap on Fridays, where we go through the teams and we discuss them, and we try and predict who we think will come out on top in qualifying, as well as give you a little bit of news and heads up as to how the weekend is going so far. And two things to point out first and foremost. I had to put this in as the intro picture. I don't know if you can see it, Ciaran, on your end, but the
I
new.
can't, but I'm sure it's fantastic.
It's the new grid boxes. I don't know if you've read this. You
Oh,
read this in the news that they've now. I love the fact that despite Formula One being the pinnacle of motorsport and we have 20 of the world's most talented racing drivers, we need to paint lines in the middle of the grid to make sure people line up correctly.
they are huge as well. They are absolutely massive.
I
It's quite funny hearing Jensen Button talking about them on the commentary because it's one of those back in my day we'd never have had this nonsense, but it seemingly is now an issue. So fair enough for sorting it out, I suppose.
Yeah, it's like, we had to get. It's like they got a little bit embarrassed about the fact that they had they had Ocon have it in Bahrain and then Alonso in Saudi Arabia. So they thought, let's just save the embarrassment rather than handing out penalties, and let's just try and tweak it so that this doesn't happen again. I love that it's almost like the FIA is trying to save some face.
Well,
Um,
it's one of those things that makes it look like the FIA are in control of the situation when really what they're doing is just letting the drivers do what they have been doing, but it's just legal now. So well done, everyone.
just take a little wheel outside the box as a treat, just a little one, Hopefully, no one notices, even though it's really
I'd
bloody obvious on camera.
I'd have massive respect if someone still lined up outside the box. That'd be really funny. I think we should be every week a different driver should have a penalty for starting outside it. I
We'd
reckon.
we'd run out of races first, given it's only a 20-person grid, and we got 23 races to get through this year. That would be quite funny. Also, I mean, we got to point this out as well because this is one of the big talking points going into this weekend as well, Ciaran, is that Stefano Domenicali's been talking again, of CEO of Formula One Management, of course, and it's kind of continued on from last week. I don't know how much of a MotoGP fan you are, Ciaran, but we had,
Oh yeah, massive.
but we had Stefano.
Marquez,
Yeah,
nice person.
playing bowling, of course. You may have seen that Domenicali waved the checkered flag that weekend. He was in the area. But also, while doing some media interviews, he talked about the possibility of potentially cutting down on practice. Now, I think he's talked a little bit about this last year as well, about the possibility, 3 hours of practice might be a bit much. We've got 3 sessions right now. He might want to consider cutting it down to two permanently. They've asked the drivers. They seem to be a bit split down the middle. I mean, where do you sit on this one, and how do you feel about it?
Difficult. I mean, today recency bias for me would go. I'd rather scrap Friday completely because it means I wouldn't have had to be up as early as I was today. I'd be very surprised if the teams and mechanics and engineers would want to see that happen. As much running as possible, especially like in this early stage of the season. Every second is so valuable for these teams trying to figure out what's going on, and every track is so different, requires different things. So I think from an entertainment standpoint, I don't love watching practice. It's not the most fascinating thing at times, but equally, just for the sport, I think everything needs to be as prepared as possible, and you need to give everyone as much chance to acclimatize to each track if you're going to be requiring so many different setups throughout the year. So I can't see it happening, but what I don't know. You don't know with Formula One or the FIA these days. Whatever happens, they can just decide on a whim. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, they've certainly put feelers out there. The sprint itself is inherently a 2 practice session weekend, and one of them is kind of redundant given it's on a Saturday morning in Parc Fermé conditions. So, like, well, what's the point of it, really? Which is kind of weird. I know Imola last year they teased going to a 2-day weekend because they trialed that out, and I didn't have any problem with it with it being a Saturday and Sunday only weekend. So. Look, I'm kind of split down the middle on this one because, like you said, the teams are absolutely like the teams and the team bosses and the mechanics are going to want all the running time they can get to be as prepared as possible. The drivers seemingly don't like it. They actually want like the spontaneousness. I think George Russell literally said, "Give it to Formula 2," which I thought was quite a little bit accidentally condescending. Yeah, give it to the rookies and the newbies coming up. They need it. Which I thought was.
It's also worth mentioning though, like track income. Like they're going to want fans at the track as much as possible. So if your weekend essentially loses a day and they start all the celebrations on Friday, then cars on track Saturday, that will affect income for these places. So, that's also got to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said that they were going to go with this sprint idea long term because my thought was looking at the schedule was like, well, you've now got 3 days of meaningful action rather than 2 because they moved the conventional qualifying session, what we call qualifying, to Friday night. And I think they were quite clever to put it in about 6 p.m, like, late afternoon slot when people get in from work on a Friday. And that's, from what I've seen and what I talk to about with fans, that seems to be like the favourite session is qualifying. It almost always bangs. The format works really well. And having that on a Friday and then having a sprint on a Saturday works quite well. So I think there's a range of arguments you can make on this one. Guys in the chat, let us know how you feel about it. I see Curbster 10 saying we definitely don't need as much as we currently have, but what to fill it with? That's a very good question. I think it's inevitable they're going to go with sprints every single race weekend at some point. If they can arrange a financial compensation, I think they'll definitely go down that road at some point. We've gone from 3 to 6 this year already. MotoGP went all in and went, every single round straight away, which I thought was bold of them, and didn't work out because one of their title contenders got injured first race of the season. Way to go, guys. So that, not to take pot shots at our 2-wheeled friends, I'm a fan of both, but I thought that was quite an interesting observation. It's again, let us know in the comments if you guys got any thoughts on that, because I'm fascinated, because I don't think there's any right or wrong answer on this one. I think it's all down to personal preference, and that's what kind of makes it interesting. Mega vs Prime says FP2 on sprint weekends are kind of useless due to Parc Fermé too. Yeah, I completely agree. There's no real point to them, indeed. So yeah, let's have a look. Let's go up and down the grid, and let's talk about some of these teammate battles and see where we're at. We'll give you some updates on some stats as well, and any other interesting observations we'll get into. I've picked AlphaTauri to go first on this occasion. Q4 the lightning bolts, as we see graphically. Love that. Cheers, Benji. Much appreciated. Yuki Tsunoda and Nick De Vries, of course. I mean, did you see in FP1, Ciaran? Big spin for Yuki Tsunoda. Went airborne across the turn 1 grass and gravel trap. That was a frightener. Somehow kept it out of the wall.
Yeah, there's been a few moments like that today. So, well, not so far. It's done. But just moments of miraculous saves, and just I'm surprised there's not been a big shunt or a big crash today. Especially when you see the traffic going around as well. It's very tight.
That was one of the most wacky FP1 sessions I can ever remember watching. Like half a dozen guys almost spinning, some actual spins, traffic everywhere, car failures. I mean, Logan Sargent's had an electrical failure. We'll get to him in a little bit, but all sorts of carnage in FP1. You don't normally get that. Like maybe that was their way of trying to get Stefano to keep it. Who knows? But AlphaTauri, Yuki Tsunoda 2-0 up so far in both qualifying and the race on Nick De Vries. And I mean, I remember when we were doing pre-season preview shows, Ciaran, that we were very much in the club that this was like a make or break year for Yuki Tsunoda. And I think, ignoring spins in FP1 aside, I think he's held up his end of the deal so far. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think he's been very impressive. 2 qualies, 2 races. I think it's difficult to tell because we still don't really know the full extent of the field and how tight it really is or where a car really is amongst the pack. But he's performing like last week. Saudi Arabia. He's looking strong. He looks like he's getting a lot out of the car, and it looks like something has just switched on for him, which I don't think has been there consistently over the last couple of years. Time will tell. And I don't think De Vries is doing a bad job at all. I think Yuki is just outperforming the car a little bit. But that'll become more clear as the season goes on. But he's doing what he needs to do at the moment. That's not a car that's going to be comfortably in the points, especially now we've got this top 8 kind of sorted. So I'd say he's doing very well, and hopefully he can push on because I'd love to see him succeed. I would love to see the Yuki Tsunoda we've all kind of thought was in there, but haven't seen too often.
If there's one thing I've always said about Tsunoda since making his F1 debut a couple of years ago is that he's got speed. If you watched him in Formula 2, he was incredibly fast as well. Like for raw ability, he's right up there. That's never been the issue. It's been about consistency and avoiding mistakes. And he's been excellent so far this season. He's comfortably out-qualified and out-raced Nick de Vries so far. And as I've mentioned before, and a lot of people have been very back and forth on this with Nick de Vries, he's not your average rookie. We all know he's not your average rookie. His racing background, I mean, he's an FIA world champion. There's no getting around that. He was excellent in Formula E when he won that title over there. So this is not like your Formula 2 rookie that comes up that is, that might have some team problems. This is a much more experienced rookie that's come in, and Tsunoda's handled his business so far. 2 fighting 11th places in both rounds so far. And hey, like you said, with the top 8 seemingly locked out, those 11th places might actually matter. The count-back rule might come into play a lot more this year because I don't think there's going to be a lot of points on offer for the back half of the grid so far. But I completely agree with you, Ciaran. I think Tsunoda's been one of the drivers of the season so far. I'm gonna put that out there as well. I think he's been outstanding, especially given if you listen to his team boss and how down he's been on the car and the team in general. Possibility of sale, says he doesn't trust his engineers, says the car lacks everything to be quick. You wouldn't be able to tell from Tsunoda.
It's motivation. Clearly.
It's not what I would necessarily call motivation, but I guess it works. It's getting results, so I can't fault him in that sense, I suppose. But are we going to keep the trend going, Ciaran? Tsunoda for another one to make it 3-0 so far this season?
I think so. I would expect it to get tighter as the season goes on and Nick gets into the swing of things a bit more. But yeah, I'd go this weekend, Tsunoda. Yeah.
I agree with you on that one. I think Tsunoda makes it 3-0. And before we move on as well, I wanted to say, I think you're absolutely right about Nick de Vries. I think if this was in a vacuum and we were only focusing on de Vries' performances, I don't think people would be as harsh as people have been on it. I think it's just Tsunoda, I think, has been more outstanding than de Vries has been poor, if that makes sense. I think it's one of those ones where you got to kind of look at it through different sort of nuances, I suppose. Yeah. But yeah, I agree with you. I think Tsunoda will make it 3-0 on this one. Let's get into Williams next, and oh boy, that was an up and down session. Logan Sargeant didn't even set a lap in FP2. I believe it was an electrical issue, they said, through FP2, so no running at all for Logan Sargeant in FP2, which is unfortunate for him. Stats so far: Albon up 2-0 in qualifying. They're 1 each in races after Albon's failure in Saudi Arabia. And we've not really talked about Logan Sargeant on the channel very much, Ciaran. I mean, what have you made of his rookie season so far?
I think he came in strong. I thought he was very good in Bahrain. Sort of a little bit more of an inconsequential race in Jeddah, but I think he's come in, and I honestly expected him to be at the back of the grid. This is mostly because I was expecting Williams to not have made the jump they seem to have. They've really... By tightening up, they've really brought that back end of the grid together, so anything's possible.
Absolutely.
But I think he has shown nothing to concern you or to worry you about how he's going to perform this season. It's not going to be a storming rookie season by any stretch of the imagination, but he's not that far behind Albon. A bit further back in Jeddah, obviously. But yeah, I think he's solid. He looks solid. He looks dependable. And it's where you want a rookie to come in. A young rookie he's come in, and as soon as you are doing that, then you can move forward, you can progress. So I'm pretty impressed by him so far, definitely.
Only 8 seconds behind Albon in Bahrain, if memory serves. So he was right there with him, which is pretty good going for a first weekend. I think I do agree. I think part of that is that Williams as a team has made big strides in the off season. I remember Albon in testing saying, we just want to be a better last," which is an amazing phrase. That's a very Albon phrase, and I do love that about him. But it looks like they're not last anymore, which is already a big step in the right direction for Williams, and like raising their floor by having. And look, I liked Nicholas Latifi, but let's be honest, he was not really an F1 quality driver, unfortunately. You know, we will raise our knives of Nutella to the sky, in that essence. But
that could be considered an act of aggression in some countries, I think.
You're using Nutella as a lethal weapon, but
there's more than knife, I think.
Yeah, that's probably fair. But no, I think Logan's been pretty solid so far, to be honest with you, and I think he's really done a solid job so far. Bit sloppy in Saudi Arabia qualifying. It was a bit unlucky as well that his first lap was taken off from a really nonsense track limits penalty.
Oh, that was ridiculous.
Yeah, just touched the pink zone on the way to the start finish was completely baffling to me. But I think I'm going to go 3-0 Albon on this matchup because for me, Logan missing out on a whole practice session is not ideal, and I think Albon is still slightly better at the moment. But Logan, I think, has been impressive so far, Ciaran.
Yeah, I think I'll go with 3-0 as well. But that is kind of, again, with the Tsunoda thing, it's more because I think Albon is a very, very good driver. And to be considered as a vaguely close battle, Logan's doing very well. So good start to the season.
Agreed, 100%. Right, let's get into McLaren next. And it's not a good sign when on Hot Takes Wednesday, somebody literally sent in a quote saying that Daniel Ricciardo will score as many points as McLaren will this weekend, which I just thought, oh no. Like, are we that down on McLaren already? The answer is yes, apparently.
with good reason as well.
Yeah, to be fair, it's kind of deserved as well. I mean, to be fair, they were more unlucky in Saudi Arabia than anything else. I mean, if you haven't seen the footage, check the onboards. Pierre Gasly was the one that whacked Piastri's front wing, and then the piece of front wing hit Norris's car 200 yards behind him, which is just bad luck Brian in race car form, if I've ever seen it. But they're both won each so far in quali and in race trim. Piastri, very impressive in Saudi Arabia qualifying. I think he ended up 8th on the grid after Leclerc's penalty was put into account. And also, a little fun fact for you: first time Piastri's ever raced a single seater in his home country, which is nice. And I know he's got a big crowd turnout for him this weekend. They do love their Aussies over here in Melbourne. But again, I want to touch base with what have you made of Piastri so far?
Hard to tell from Bahrain. Hard to really get any judgment of where he was at because he's in a car that didn't work very well, and then a car that literally stopped working. So in Jeddah, very impressive, and on a worse tyre, Lando couldn't get past him, couldn't break away from him, which is a big deal. We know how good Lando is, and yeah, sure, the car is a big factor in this at the moment. And I'm not going to suddenly be like, Lando can't do this anymore. But Oscar just looks reliable. With what he's been given, he looks reliable. It looks like he's come in and adjusted well. And the way he was taking that track in FP2 in the wets, on the intermediate, sorry, he looks confident. He's giving that car everything. He's finding every inch of the track where a lot of the other drivers were standing well away from. So I think this, as good a weekend as McLaren could have at the moment, I think he's going to find that this weekend. I have faith in him.
I remember us talking about him in pre-season, and you had that theory that obviously he took Daniel Ricciardo's seat, and it was a very high-profile move, and that because this was going to be all that Piastri knows about driving an F1 car, he might actually be a better fit for what McLaren need. And I think you've been proven correct so far, which is so. I will give credit where credit is due, Ciaran.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
And I think he's been very good so far. And I think there was rumours under the table that the moment they ran him in pre-season testing, I think it was the Abu Dhabi test originally, that they knew he was the real deal. And yeah, it looks like that's coming to fruition. I would love to see how McLaren actually get on in a race that isn't compromised, first and foremost, because, again, Bahrain was a disaster, and then they were just bitterly unlucky in Saudi Arabia. So I want to see where this car actually shapes up, because it's still a little bit all over the place. But they are tied. Piastri was excellent in Saudi Arabia in terms of qualifying. Norris made a mistake in Q1 to get eliminated early. They are one apiece so far this season. Which way are you going on this one, Ciaran? Are you going to stick with Norris?
No, I'm going to go Piastri. There's just something about the atmosphere this weekend. It feels like this is the start of his season. He's had his bad luck. To me, this is where he starts the season. And I'm not at all saying this is going to be the story of the season by any means. But I just see him coming out on top in qualifying.
The hometown hero vibe. I get it.
I just like the idea of it. It's like a nice film. Nice film.
A nice feel-good moment. I get it. I'm gonna go Norris. I'm gonna.
Logic would dictate that is the right answer.
Yeah, but I can't swing away from Norris too quickly on this one. But I wholeheartedly agree. I think Piastri's been pretty damn solid so far as a rookie. Can't go wrong with him so far. Alfa Romeo. Now, this was interesting. I don't know how much of Saudi Arabia you were paying attention to, Ciaran, but
I saw it.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you did.
I just had a day off. I just took some holiday. Went to the southwest.
Yeah, why not? It's perfectly nice this time of year. But it felt like it was the first weekend, to me at least, that Zhou looked properly ahead of Valtteri Bottas. He out-qualified him by a couple of attempts in Saudi Arabia qualifying. I think Bottas drove over Piastri's front wing and damaged his floor. So again, Gasly indirectly ruined 3 people's races that day on a nudge, which is just... that's very Formula
If you can
1.
get away with it, absolutely go for it.
Yeah, why not? That is your competition. I mean, that it was a lap 1 incident, if I've ever seen one. But it looked like Zhou was a bit more on. They are split each in the stats, 1 each in quali and race trim so far. Like I said, Zhou out qualifying Bottas in Saudi Arabia. Was that a blip to you, or do you think there's a possibility that Zhou is now running it a bit closer to Val?
Difficult. Because we had Valtteri himself sort of saying he couldn't understand why there was the difference even before the race. He's like, Zhou is just getting something out of his car that I'm not getting out of mine. And as soon as you hear people in Formula 1 drivers talking like that, you start to wonder, are games being played, or is this someone who's not accepting that last season's rookie is now quicker than him? Very hard to tell, and I think we would need... this weekend will be a big factor in seeing that.
Agreed.
I think Zhou's very impressive. I think he showed a lot of, on the back end of last season especially, a lot of reliable, consistent performances when the car just wasn't going to be able to do much in that Alpha. And Bottas, he's a very accomplished driver. I think he's still a very good driver. So I don't think it's as black and white as one weekend means that Zhou is now quicker than him, but I think they're one of the closest pairings on the grid at the moment, I would suggest. It's very tight. So in terms of calling it, very difficult to do. What do you reckon?
This is close. I think Zhou is definitely closer to Bottas than he was around this sort of time last year, which is kind of a given obviously he was a rookie and it takes some time. But I think Zhou has held up his end of the deal so far this season. I think... I'm not sure how much Bahrain was an outlier with Bottas finishing 8th. It was a very early last season performance from Val where it was like, I'm just going to cash in on these points where I can get them, take advantage of other people's mistakes and just, park the car in a good spot. This one's a little bit up in the air. I'm going to go Valtteri on this one, but it would not surprise me at all if Zhou was able to continue his good form and actually out-qualify Val on this one. How do you reckon, Ciaran?
Well, to represent that divide, I will go Zhou then. We'll split it between us, and everyone's happy.
Yeah, we'll gently mock each other on Slack for it afterwards. But,
Yeah.
Let's
a
get
metaphorical little tickle.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Oh, buy me a drink first. We got Haas up
It's
next.
not even 8 a.m., Drake.
It's 5 p.m. somewhere. But we got Haas up next. Now, this is an interesting one in their matchup here. Hulkenberg is up 2-0 in qualifying, but Magnussen is 2-0 up in races, which is interesting. I think they're the only team to have that swing where one driver's won both qualifying matchups and the other one
Ferrari.
Is Ferrari the other one? Let me have a quick look at the list. My list of notes. Quick check. Yeah, you're actually quite right. It is actually Ferrari's the other team.
I was
as
reading
well.
your list of notes.
Yeah,
I didn't know that off the top of my head.
I had it tabbed down for a second there, but yeah, you're absolutely right. But yeah, K-Mag's been the better man in race trim. Hulkenberg's been faster over a lap, and it's like Haas have this knack of sticking their car up high up the timing sheets on low fuel 1-lap runs, and then when the race comes along, they struggle a little bit more. It's an interesting dynamic at the moment. I mean, Kieran, what have you made of Haas so far?
It's difficult. I realize I start every point by saying that. I've become aware of that. I think Hulkenberg's been very impressive all race weekend until Sunday. But I'd say first race in Bahrain was damage. Wasn't there an issue in Jeddah as well? I'm sure there was some sort of incident, or I can't remember off the top of my head. Our friends at MoneyGram can remind us. But I think Magnussen's been disappointing all race weekend, but then he shows kind of a reliability on a Sunday that we've not seen in the last season. Yeah. Our big problem with Kevin last year was that he was being very impressive all weekend, but then just some sort of overly aggressive maneuver into turn one, or just unnecessary damage. So it feels like he's kind of eliminated that on race day, which it's coming good to an extent because tense finish in Jeddah, but I think Nico just needs a bit of luck to go with the qualifying performances because he's doing well. He's doing well in quality. We just need to back this up in the race, I think.
So, for our MoneyGram teammate battle, or from our friends over there, who do you reckon will end up qualifying versus? Do you think the trend continues? Hulkenberg goes up 3-0. Does K-Mag get a qualifying point on the board? How do you look at it?
I think Magnussen needs to start putting that shift in quali because it would obviously be better for his races where he's doing well.
He was really good at that last year as well, which is funnily enough.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Hulkenberg, but I don't think that's a trend that's going to continue. I think that will switch around at some point.
I'm going to go K-Mag on this one. I got a feeling this is going to be the weekend where K-Mag puts together the qualifying and the race over the whole weekend, and I think he might even steal a point or two. I think they've got the potential to do that.
Do you think he's going to send it as well as you can send money internationally with MoneyGram? Our choice for money transfers.
I think he very well could, Kieran. Very, 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 very subtle there. Very slick.
MoneyGram,
indeed. Thanks to our friends over there for powering the wrap, of course. Let's get into Alpine, who are next up. The Alpine it's still kind of hard to place. Ocon's been up 2-0 in qualifying so far this season. They're one each in race trim off. We don't talk about Ocon's Bahrain. That was that was rough.
Spectacularly bad.
A hat-trick. It's like Soccer AM all over again. Give him his hat-trick ball of penalties, but very different kind. But Ocon's been up 2-0 so far. I want to get your take on where Gasly, what have you made of Gasly so far? Because I remember we both had bold predictions going into this season that we thought that Gasly might struggle in this matchup. But what have you made of him so far in the pink of Alpine?
I'm not going to say difficult. I'm not going to say it, even though it is correct, because I thought a fantastic race in Bahrain that kind of went under the radar, back of the grid. Was it 9th in the end?
Yeah, 9th.
8th or 9th?
20th to 9th, yeah.
And then a slightly less impressive race in Jeddah. But I think it's difficult to tell that combination between the two because of, obviously, Ocon's Bahrain. And I would always, if you asked me to pick who I would reliably pick in a driver lineup, it would be Ocon. If you can't include the top 8 teams, I think he's a massively underrated driver. I think he's very talented.
Agreed.
And I think this is a season where Gasly can prove if he is on that echelon. if he is on the same level as Ocon, but we've just not had a chance to see it yet so much. So I hope we do. I hope we see full head-to-head this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on. I mean, Jeddah, Ocon was, I think, 3 tenths better in qualifying, and then in the race, I think Gasly was more just following Ocon home. I think there was a few seconds between them on track. So Gasly looks like he's close, which is good for a guy that's only done 2 rounds of a new team. I think that's pretty good going. But I think Ocon will continue the trend and make it 3-0 in qualifying this season. But I do agree with Cube Cham in the chat who says Alpine just look there. They do look. They do look like they look like this distinct number 5 team at the moment, the best of the rest. Given that the big 4 are clearly somewhat in a league of their own at the moment. So,
well, I think it's. I think people are being more critical of Alpine than potentially they should be because you've got to apply that logic to Ferrari and Mercedes because they have all been jumped by Aston Martin. And it's not so much like Alpine were never realistically going to be pushing into that top 3. They were going to be settling in that 4th place. And Aston Martin have just ruined everyone's season.
Yeah.
And their finances at the end of the year. Because, but yeah, Alpine, they don't seem to have moved much in the field apart from that Aston jump. And that kind of, it can't be very inspiring when you're just going, yeah, let's try and stay where we were last season. That's what we're aiming for. That's what we can do. But I don't know. I think they've got a very strong driver lineup, and Gasly's doing his job. He's doing his job at the moment. So I'll go Gasly. I'll give him a qualifying.
Okay, give him a qualifying. Okay, cool. Let's see how that one plays out. Next up, the Scuderia. This is our friends at Ferrari who, I joked on Twitter earlier today that Carlos Sainz did a 1:19.8 as his best time in practice too, but that wasn't his lap. It was the amount of time taken to list off Ferrari's problems, because he's been very candid about that this weekend, saying that our tyre deck is terrible. We need big updates. Our team's working round the clock. There was news this morning from everyone's new favourite team boss, Fred Vasseur, that there's actually no upgrades due. There was due to be upgrades this round. They're not bringing them. So it looks like they're thinking about maybe even bigger upgrades. So that's going to be interesting. But for those on the stats, as Ciaran alluded to earlier, Leclerc up 2-0 in qualifying, Sainz up 2-0 in races. Although I'd argue all of that has got nothing to do with Charles, which is just kind of very Charles. In that sense. But what have you made of Ferrari's mess so far? I mean, there's a lot to unpack here.
Oh, it's just training at this point. You know, you have a whole year of thinking about it last year, and then when it starts in a similar vein, I mean, like I said on a podcast we did, which was great, you should go and listen to it. I think they've clearly sorted strategy out to an extent, or at least so from what we've seen this season, which is a good job. And eliminating mistakes one at a time is so important. But equally, there's still so much to be done. And you've got Carlos talking about this car just cannot be developed as much as Red Bull's can. Their concept cannot reach quite as far as Red Bull's.
Ooh.
And I mean, I don't know if that is how true that is. I think maybe that's an excuse for just underperforming, or your car just isn't where it should be. But and you have got Red Bull who can extrapolate everything from what they've got. But yeah, it looked like a team. No luck for Charles at the moment. The safety car last week, to be fair, for all of Ferrari, the safety car really messed them up. But yeah, I hope for an improved Ferrari this season. I don't believe in an improved Ferrari this season.
I love that my old mucker Ryan Eric King puts in the chat. At what point does a raft of upgrades become so big that it's a new car? That's a great question, King. I wish I could answer that for you because it's a fascinating way of looking at it. But yeah, I agree. I think it is a bit of a excuse for their underperforming so far. It reminds me, and you know, I know you're a bit of a football man, Ciaran. Like, remember when David Moyes famously said when he was Manchester United manager that we need to improve in defending, attacking, and passing, which I just thought was chef's kiss. What a quote! Yeah, I think that's an adequate way of summing up Ferrari at the moment. Do you think Leclerc keeps it going, makes it 3-0 in qualifying?
Yeah, undoubtedly for me.
I agree. Me too. Much better qualifier. Has been I think one of the best qualifiers in Formula One since he got here. So, yeah, I'm fully inclined to agree with you. I think it's going to be 3-0
before a DNF.
Before a DNF, because
Yep.
that would be very Ferrari, wouldn't it? I mean, the old
Why change the habit of a lifetime?
Exactly. I love the Cube Jam in the chat as well says, the old broom and handle debate. Very true. I'm getting big Doctor Who flashbacks to when Capaldi's first episode was. He talked about the broom and the handle riddle.
Oh, it's only Fools and Horses. That's
classic.
Classic.
Yeah, gotcha. Showing my age a little bit there on that one, I must say.
Yeah, and I'm definitely not with only Fools and Horses.
Which is amazing, given you're younger than me. So I think it's quite funny.
I feel like I'm dying every day, Dre.
We got Mercedes up next, and wow. Would recommend, if you missed it last night, there's a brand new video up where I talk about Mercedes and certain struggles of one Sir Lewis Hamilton. For those keeping up on the stats, Russell 2-0 up in qualifying, and they split the races 1 each so far. I mean, Ciaran, I want your take. How do you think Hamilton's doing? And this is, I still think, like last year, a very close matchup.
I think it's becoming less and less close, I'll be honest. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about this. I think when I talked about Daniel Ricciardo leaving McLaren, one of the things I said was his struggle was, at that age, you're just so used to driving a certain way, you adapt. Your adaptability inevitably goes down. And I think we've seen that with Lewis, and you can't blame him. He's had cars built around him entirely that have just worked for a very long time. So suddenly you're back into this mindset of, I've got to approach this whole new thing with completely different feel and drive and make it work. And that's why, like with Oscar at McLaren, George can come in and he's expecting less from a car so he can get more from it. And I don't think it's a question of Lewis's talent. I don't think he's any less of a driver than he was. I think this is a scenario that just can never really suit him at this stage in his career. So, I mean, I think Russell is the lead driver at Mercedes. And I don't know if that is a. Ooh. Well, no, I know it's an incredibly controversial thing to say.
Oh boy!
I don't think anyone from Mercedes would say that. I don't think George would say that. But I think if you're being realistic and looking forward as a team, that's the basket to put your eggs in for me. I think George is just a very, very strong and capable driver who will just get better. So I'm going to get a hate for that. I apologise.
If you can't hear it, that's the pitchforks outside Ciaran's house as we speak. That are amassing. There you go. You should check it outside. It's only bright because there's fire coming out there. They're burning effigies in
I'm in danger.
Exactly. I think it's still very close. I still think this one could easily go either way. On this one, I think it's still pretty close between them in all aspects. I think one of the comments that I got from the Hamilton video last night was that Hamilton beat Russell by 5 seconds in Bahrain. George Russell beat Lewis Hamilton by 5 seconds in Saudi Arabia. So they literally could not be separated. It couldn't be closer, which I think is a great stat. I reckon so. I think Hamilton gets one back this weekend. I think this will be a Hamilton weekend. I think he'll bounce back strong, and I think this is where he'll start getting another point on the board in quali and in races, because Hamilton just has a way of coming through in the end. He just does, because it's Lewis Hamilton. Do you reckon 3-0 Russell?
Yeah.
Wow.
3-0 Russell. I mean, races is a little bit different. I think, Hamilton's so good on a Sunday, but Russell, he's missed a Saturday. So, well, he's missed through everything at the moment, but yeah, I'll go Russell.
I love that multiple people in the chat was like, "This isn't Hot Takes Wednesday, Ciaran." Wow.
I'm just so used to it. It's all I do. Yep. I love
it. Aston Martin. Hey, Aston Martin, everybody. And yeah, Alonso has dominated the proceedings so far for understandable reasons. 2-0 up in quali and race trim. Ciaran, your man's is looking solid. I know you're the Lance Stroll man round here, and I know he's not quite Alonso, but this must be paradise for you right now. He's actually got a competitive car again.
It is wonderful. The performance in Bahrain was truly heartwarming. Make that into a movie as well. I just like movies.
Sure.
But yeah, remarkable comeback to start that race, get the result he did. Very unlucky in Jeddah after one of the best moves I've ever seen in Formula One around signs on the outside.
That was a brilliant pass.
That was our MoneyGram send of the week, wasn't it, Dre?
It was indeed.
Well, thank you to our friends at MoneyGram. But yeah, like, it's so frustrating for that to have happened because I think that was where we were going to get a better picture of where Lance is in this field.
Sure.
Because, he's in the car, he's feeling a bit better, and then the car gives in on him.
Oh.
And it's sad, but I just want to see where he actually is in this pecking order because I don't think he won't be above Alonso. No. Alonso is on absolute fire and is driving as well as he ever has, which is fantastic to see. But is Lance that fourth place driver? Is he going to be consistently finishing fourth behind the Red Bulls and Fernando? If so, Aston Martin in for an absolute stormer of a season. But it's just exciting times to be the biggest Aston Martin fan on the planet, which I am. I get angry messages from people going, "What gives you the right to be a Lance Stroll's biggest fan?" I'm Lance Stroll's biggest fan. People get really aggressive with me, and I don't respect them.
I don't blame you. I mean, it's we all think we're the biggest fan of someone at some point. I mean, I said that about me with Sebastian Vettel for years. I know exactly how that feels. I'm not going to argue it. I think it's going to be 3-0 Fernando. I think, again, he's just in sensational form. Fastest in FP2. Not that really meant much in the end because it was half rain affected, but it's nice to see him on top of a timing sheet, right? You like seeing those end of session graphics with Alonso first. It's another refreshing change. I wonder how long it will take before we get sick of the pair and then Alo in the initials on the top of a timing sheet this season. But
well, it's going to end up being Alo the.
You really think so?
No.
I love that not even you can say that with a straight face. I think that's hilarious.
A girl can dream.
Alonso 3-0.
Yeah.
Agreed. And finally, Red Bull. We're trying here. We're trying to make it seem like there's some spice. We may or may not have made a video about this earlier this week, and I love that 90% of the comments all read, "Nah, Perez ain't that guy." The point I was going to make in the comments, if I was allowed to comment on it, would be Verstappen can beat Perez week in, week out. He might only be doing it for 6 points, and that's the problem. If all Perez has to do is keep it close, and we could still have a title fight. If he just wins even like 7 out of 23, that could be enough to make it interesting. I remember 2014, like Nico Rosberg only won 5 rounds that year, and it went to the decider. I know it was double points, but even if it wasn't double points, he still would have been with a shot of winning the championship. Perez has been told he has full backing to challenge Max for the title. Do you actually believe that, Ciaran?
No. I think it's very easy to say that after a race where you can keep them separated, even though Max didn't really want to listen to that. If Perez is clearly ahead, he can win comfortably, he can get a 1-2. There's absolutely no reason to not say, "Oh yeah, you go on, Checo. Well done." But realistically, that team is so wrapped around the finger of Max Verstappen. And I think fairly enough, he is the best driver on the grid by some way, and it could be years of victories for him. So I think I don't think they'll disrespect Perez. I don't think they'll take a win away from him in a race. I don't think Verstappen would lose to him if it was a battle between the two. But all their eggs are in the Verstappen basket. And if the motivation Perez needs to up his game and finish second in the championship in the car that should easily last year, he should have been second in the championship. I think if that motivates him to just keep that battle up and they end up with 1-2s throughout the season, Red Bull are absolutely laughing. But I don't think they genuinely would back a title fight for him unless Verstappen was completely out of it.
Yeah, pardon me. I agree in the most part, and I agree with King in the chat that says a mechanical swing could keep it close. Absolutely. That's if Red Bull are going to dominate, we're talking about 7-point swings. Well, 6 to 8, depending on where the fastest lap point may go. That could also play a factor in things, but it would take 4 rounds potentially for Max to build up enough points to have a race in hand. So it could easily swing that way. And like we saw in Jeddah qualifying, this Red Bull, maybe not the most reliable car that we thought it was after the drive shaft errors. We've heard lots of complaints from Max about the gearbox and downshifts all season long as well. So I think there's room there for Red Bull to have just a small chink in the armour. I think on raw pace, I think they're still incredibly fast, and I don't think there's anything to worry about for them in terms of pace relative to the field. But they are 1-1 in qualifying and races. Are we going Max again here, Ciaran?
He's never wonderful on a Saturday, is he?
No.
He's not the most consistent Saturday performer. But yeah, I've got to go. Yeah, sorry, I'm being stupid. Yeah, Max.
I love that you were just trying to talk yourself into Perez and you just couldn't do it, could you?
I'd love to be optimistic, but yeah, Max for the quality today.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Verstappen on pole?
I'm going to go Alonso, and I'm going to go Alonso every race of the season because I want it to happen. But realistically, yes. But Alonso's up there. He's in with a shout, I reckon.
I admire your optimism as ever. That'll do it for our teammate quali battles edition of the WTF1 Wrap, powered by MoneyGram. I'll be back at the same time tomorrow morning with a special guest. Break from the I don't think that's how it's actually pronounced, but I will try to get that enthusiasm across for 8:15 on a Friday morning.
Please do that every time you ask a question.
I will do. That would be part of the fun. Break from the Engine Breaking podcast. I'm sure you guys know him very well. He's a fantastic former engineer at Red Bull Racing as well. So please, if you haven't already, check us out on Twitter, WTF1 Official. There is a tweet from last night where you can send in questions that may very well end up on the show tomorrow morning. So do find that, send some tweets in, and me and Break can answer some questions on tomorrow. And also we'll talk a little bit of qualifying as well, of course, because it'll be on Saturday morning. So yeah, 7:30 UK time tomorrow morning for the big questions with me and Break. Thanks everyone for watching along live or on demand, and of course we'll see you tomorrow for day 2 of the WTF1 Wrap from Australia, powered by our friends at MoneyGram. Until then, I've been Dre, he's been Ciaran. Sayonara, take care.